LeFleur, thank you for coming again to Peabody School District. Would you?
Thank you.
Yep.
So I'd like to introduce Tom LeFleur. Mr. LeFleur is presently the business manager in Gloucester and is the finalist candidate for the business manager's job here. We are about to open a school committee meeting. I think, do we have to open it officially? As a business manager interview?
We're not going into a school committee meeting.
No, okay. So I'll turn it over to the chair, Mr. Olympio, and ask the school committee to introduce themselves. Then maybe Mr. LeFleur can make an opening statement.
Sure.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. LeFleur, I'm Joe Amico.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome, Mr. LeFleur, Brandy Carpenter.
Nice to meet you. John Olympio.
Nice to see you again, Jared Hockman.
You as well.
I'm Andrew Arnonis. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. LeFleur, Beverly Griffin.
Nice to meet you.
Mr. LeFleur, would you like to make an opening statement before the school committee begins to grill you?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be this far along the process, and I'm sure, positive, I will do a great job for you if given the opportunity. And hit me with your best shot.
Okay. You know, I'll start. What would you best describe? What's your communication style? Could you tell the committee what would best describe your communication style?
Easygoing and open. I'm very approachable. I guess it depends on the audience. In a formal presentation setting, we will have a formal presentation, and for the most part, one-on-one or in small groups. However, it's very easygoing and approachable.
And why Peabody? Why did you choose Peabody? So you could,
Why not? I'll twist it back on you. To be honest, I was looking to shorten my commute. I looked at the distance, waited for some openings. I wanted to stay within municipal school district. There's so much specialization now at regionals and collaboratives, and the municipals, I'd rather stay in my comfort zone. And you're one of the very few communities that met that criteria for me.
great, thank you. I'll open it up to the committee. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. Mr. LeFleur, nice seeing you again.
And you,
So if we were to hire you, what would be the first thing you're going to wow us with?
I don't know if my first objective would be to assimilate what the culture here and what's going on here before making any decisions. I don't know what needs to be wowed. I think we need to identify what the issues are and bring some of the experience I have from other places here to address those issues. But until I have my hands around what those issues might be, I really don't know how to answer that question.
Well, that's a fair answer. I appreciate that. And if I may, through the chair, it seems in talking to you last week at an initial interview and reading through your resume, you have quite a bit of expertise in regard to payroll and things along those lines. So can you please elaborate on what your experience has been in that area of municipal payroll and what your perhaps, it seems like you have some prior experience through private organizations.
First and foremost, my experience with payroll is being a certified public accountant in the state of Massachusetts. I've worked for over a decade in the private sector prior to the Gloucester experience, implementing municipal financial systems, including payroll. I think I've seen every variation in a labor agreement, some that are problematic to automate, some that work a little bit better. Even in Gloucester, in the short period of time we've been able to change some of the language to more easily administer some of the facets of the contract. So I think it's bringing the experience of hundreds and hundreds of school districts with me that will allow us to move some of that forward.
And lastly, and then I'll yield to my colleagues, if I were to tell you that we still had a handwritten purchase order system in Peabody, and that I, as one committee member, would like you to look into and perhaps address, do you have I imagine you have some experience, probably vast experience with automation and things like that, but for the viewing audience, they're not here, but they're in their living rooms and at their dining room tables listening to us as we speak. Can you give us some of your experience in that regard? Automation and updating
Again,
systems.
implementing hundreds of school districts on enterprise-level systems, that is one of the key portions of these systems. It should go right from the originator electronically right through. We are doing that in Gloucester. It was happening. We've implemented Munis, which I believe you're using here, in the last couple of years, and it is a fully automated process. So I'm not surprised, because a lot of organizations still have the paper process. Either they haven't had the time, or they don't have the technology, or they just haven't taken the steps to do that. It appears that you have the technology, so now it's just a matter of implementing it.
No, that's good to hear. After we complete your interview tonight, we're going to go into a budget session, which isn't terribly sunny or rosy. And, I think some level of automation and efficiencies that can develop as a result of that would ease that process in the future. So thank you again for being here, and thank you for your candor.
Yeah, the follow-up to that is that we'd like you to take this job as a volunteer.
Subject to
Thank you, Mr.
negotiation.
Hockman. Thank you, Dr. Levine. Mr. Amico.
Through the chair, speaking of volunteer, I just want to thank you for your service. I did notice a U.S. Army veteran,
Thank you,
so
sir.
thank you for your service. What do you see your first 30 days, if you were to get this job? What would you see your first 30 days as? What would your goals be right off the bat?
Initially, my goal is to meet with all interested parties, the management team, probably each and every principal, one-on-one, the direct report, certainly in the business office. I think it's my position to assimilate what's here. I need to understand what's going on here and the culture here. Then, take a systematic approach to try to exact some change. Coming in a little too strong never seems to work. In my experience, it hasn't, and watching others try that approach, it just doesn't work, especially in a municipal setting. I think, also establishing some sort of rapport with the related parties at City Hall seems to be a big issue. I've had a lot of success with that in Gloucester. We've had some relationship issues there, so to speak, and we've overcome those, and it's streamlined the process in a lot of ways for us.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amico. Mr. Arnottis?
I'm glad you just mentioned that, because I was actually going to talk about that a little bit. What is your day-to-day experience like in Gloucester, and how do you interact with the superintendent and the rest of the team up there?
Interact as needed. We have a regularly scheduled meetings, starting at the first of the week, Monday morning. The entire management team's in there, the district level management team. So we sync up, so to speak, with the entire district and move it forward, and it's really as needed. I mean, lately it's been about 4 hours a day in his office. But we have the similar budget issue you have here, so it's not been pleasant.
Okay.
But it's really as needed, and negotiations at night, and at the regular school committee meetings, et cetera.
And what brought you to Gloucester from the private sector? I thought that was interesting.
They called.
They called. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. I had actually had a human resource director at a client site, which will remain nameless, suggest to me 7, 8, 9 years ago that maybe I should think about crossing over to the dark side. She phrased it. And I thought about it for a few weeks, and maybe it was a smart thing to do. I got licensed in the state just to have a better understanding of the folks I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Gloucester was a client of ours. They were on my previous system, and when I had all the expertise in, it failed to mention to me they were moving to Munis until I was already in the door. But that's okay. We were successful with that. So they actually called me. I had been in there a half a dozen days over the course of a few years, and they thought it would be a good fit.
Thank you, Mr. Arnottis. Ms. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Mr. LeFleur, thank you for coming. And just a couple of questions. One of the things that really interested me was that you were co-founder of a telecommunications sales startup. And one of the things that that was interesting was because of all of the work that you'd have to go through setting up a company, and can you relate any of that to being a school business manager, how that will help you in this position?
I don't know that that particular experience would assist. I mean, that was in the age of the dot-com bubble, and we started a partner and myself started a firm that was really a double blind. You know, you got to think back to 98, 99 when we didn't have the great technology we have today. You as a consumer could go online. I need a DSL line at my house. We would expose that data to the telecom providers that could provide that service without exposing who you were. So it was double blind, and we were quickly bought out to stop us. I think we were a threat to the larger telecom companies at the time because it was going to make it a little bit more transparent, and they wrote a check just to keep us out.
That's good.
It was good. I wish I had another idea like that.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do. With your experience with Gloucester, that's a fairly similar school district to ours. And I know you probably haven't had any chance to like look into what we do the same or differently, but when you have explained, you know, you'd want to assimilate and speak with everyone, what are some of the things that you would be looking for as far as being able to help the staff in your position as business manager?
I think primarily I want to understand from all persons in this chain what the good things are and what the bad things are. What do they see as a problem? Because the viewpoints are very much different depending where you sit. Try to understand what they have a problem with, what's going well. One of the things I've tried to do in Gloucester is change the organization to more customer service centric. There was some hostilities in that building at the time, and it's not that way anymore. My viewpoint is the business office organization has two real subjects to deal with. One is compliance with many, many different rules and regs and laws, and the other is to serve the organization. So something as simple as sitting down with each and every principal at budget time to help them. We were caught in this particular budget season between two systems. I actually pulled budget from the old one because the payroll had lagged a little bit, and we did it manually. But I have, every year there seems to be a new principal or two. Having an expectation that they're going to understand the budget portion of a system, when they touch it once a year, it was a little, I think it's too much in my experience for most of them to be even expected to do. So we brought it down a level and actually visited with them with the HR director and the payroll resource to go through item by item. And I actually got a really good positive response from that.
Very good. And one last question, if I may. Notice throughout you've been a project manager in different, you're certified as a project manager. That's good because we have different projects going on that will probably need some expertise.
I see that. This is a beautiful one right here.
This one is. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Ms. Carpenter?
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. LeFleur. A lot of my questions have already been answered. I still have a couple. Can you tell me what type of experience you have or involvement you've had working with the MSBA?
We actually opened up a building just about the same week you opened this one up. And I've got one in accelerated repair right now, a high school roof, and we're in feasibility right now for a second elementary school. So quite a bit.
Good, okay. That's good. Could you also explain to me, since Gloucester is really, the first school system, the rest of them were private, what type of experience did you pick up? What did you learn working with the special education department area in form of budget? Because it seems to be a little bit different than the rest of the budget.
It's a lot different. It's
Yeah.
a lot more money. In Gloucester, it's about 1/3 of the entire budget now. It's really starting to be an issue.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned in the last interview, the special ed secretary sits away from me, about the distance we're apart here. And I've got systems and spreadsheets built, like for instance for circuit breaker, to calculate that. And each and every time she makes a change, she's in my doorway.
Okay. So very closely
We
with the
have to.
special, yes.
There's no two ways about it anymore. It's moving so fast. I mean, I believe we're at 39.6. We'll probably hit 40 by now, percentage in IEPs.
Yeah.
It's enormous.
Okay. Glad to hear that you work very closely with that
You-
person. You
it's-
have no choice.
There's no choice.
Right.
I don't think there's for any district.
And one other question, can you tell me what experience you've had with grants?
Grants, just managing to the grant. I mean, I don't write them.
Okay.
I'm usually the recipient. I've been put finally into the process of approving the application before it goes out. Most of the transactional volume, not dollars, is coming through, we have an outside organization, the Gloucester Education Foundation. They're a private group. They raise money for a bunch of different reasons. The teachers can actually reach out to them directly. We've built a web interface where they can do an application. So if a teacher has an idea for, I'll give you some of the past ones, like bringing in 3D printers. They bought the first 3D printer for the district a few years ago. So there's that relationship, and each and every one of those is treated as a separate grant, including school committee approval and acceptance, and managing all the way through to either returning funds, unused funds, or the final reporting. And same for the larger state DESI grants and federal.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Any further questions?
Through the chair.
Yep.
If the school committee votes to appoint you and ask us to enter into contract negotiations, how soon will you be able to start here?
I'm under contract with Gloucester till June 30th, so I would like to fulfill my obligation to them.
No, of course.
So
Will that be
July
enough time
1st.
for Gloucester?
Yes.
Oh, Ms. Dunn?
Actually, could you folks just give us a little synopsis of how you went through the selection process? Any of those details? How many people were on the committee and things like that?
He's my nephew.
Can't you tell we look the same?
Sure. We had a number of applications. We posted it and advertised it on School Spring. We had a number of applications and cut those applications to 3, I believe, right? A subcommittee made up of school committee members, myself, Kara, and other personnel interviewed all 3 members of the committee, all 3 finalist interviewees, and met afterwards, and it was a unanimous recommendation to bring only Mr. LeFleur forward.
Okay, thank you.
Anything?
Yep, that's pretty much how it went down. So, yep. Ms. Carpenter?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to hire Thomas LeFleur as unanimously recommended by the screening committee, as chaired by the superintendent of schools, as business manager for the Peabody Public School District pending contract negotiations.
Second.
Roll call vote. Let's see. Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Sarah Notice?
Yes.
Ms. Dunn? All right.
I'd like to make a second motion.
Go ahead, Ms. Carpenter.
I'd like to make a motion to allow the mayor and superintendent to enter into contract negotiations with business manager-elect Thomas LeFleur for the purposes of agreeing to a contract to be brought back to the full committee for approval at the next scheduled school committee meeting.
Second.
On the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wholeheartely expect to support this motion. I'd like to direct or ask that the mayor and the superintendent, in the negotiations with Mr. LeFleur, consider Mr. Lord's contract and some of the language that was used in that contract might be attractive for a proposal to Mr. LeFleur.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Anybody else? No? Okay. Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Ms. Dunn?
Yes.
All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'll walk you
Forward to it.
downstairs and we can start negotiating.
Thanks so much.
All right.